Okay, good evening. Welcome, everybody. My name is Anja Franczak. I'm the founder of the Institute of the Good Death, and I'm really happy to be here together with two people who are important to me in different ways. One is my friend Kacper, who invited me to moderate this meeting together with him, and we are really honored and proud and happy that we can host this conversation tonight with Stephen Jenkinson. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for being with us. So we have some time tonight to talk in this virtual space, but this is only a little first step because very soon we will meet in the real space, because Stephen is coming to Poland in May. And on May 19th and 20th, we will have a workshop in Katowice. We're very much looking forward to that, and we'll also say a bit more about that in the end. So for now, I'll pass the word on to Kacper.
Thank you. So I just want to say to invite you to treat it as a way of checking if you're sure you want to come to something that Stephen will be offering, because it's a very beautiful and heartbreaking thing to do, as it was for me. And I was wondering how to start this few minutes ago, and I thought about the way you started, Stephen, in Canada in June, that was, I guess. And you started with saying that we could start with asking how we're doing. But why we should do that, or we could start with introducing you in front of you for 1,000th time for you. So I decided not to, and I want to offer a small language gift from Polish to you, and a kind of wondering question that would follow it.
Okay.
So the place I'm in right now, which will be the place we will host the meeting with you as well. We sometimes describe it as a kind of strange cultural center, but in Polish you call it Dom Kultury, which you probably can guess has dom, domos, and domo, and culture, of course, kultura. So if you stop for a second and really think about it, then this is a very strong thing to say. Like, what would be a place that could be a home of a culture? Some kind of very prestige or intense energy that should be there, that should be serving something. And but it seems like, so this culture house that we have here, it seems like it's more accurately to be described as cultural orphanage. Which is coming from your insight, of course, and that this kind of heartbreaking honesty that you put it in the orphan wisdom school, in the name. For me, it opens some kind of gate for a different approach to looking for depth in life or spirituality. And it whispers something like, I found in very few places, and one of them was the farm that you're taking care of, and in Martin Shaw's school, for example, as well. And that whispers is something that says that there's a possibility to go deep and serious and 3D and spiritual in the locality, with honesty with where we're coming from. And so that maybe spirituality could be something not to be kind of picked up from a shelf and preferably something from really far away, like, for example, in my case was Taoism for a long time. And not that there's something, that there's no beauty or depth in Taoism, for example, but that it just feels really strange for me to wear a kimono in Poland. It just doesn't fit.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So there is this local and time-bound possibility of weaving culture and depth from exactly from where we are coming from, even if that is a closer to a crater after an atomic bomb, or what we have left of the land that we have here in Katowice, for example, which is very post-industrial mining destruction place. So I want to ask you if in that context would it be accurate to call what you're trying to do something of a like mystical branch of the Western North America, or this way of proceeding that I was trying to describe with this locality and time boundness? Is this in any way accurate description of what you're doing, or to put it differently, like what is your faith, what is your religion in that sense? Yeah.
Okay, this is an enormous question. I'm not going to take nearly as long to answer as you did to ask it, I don't think. But let's see. Well, I begin with a story, which seems to me to be the proper thing. Not an idea, not a concept, but just a little something that happened. Years ago, a woman in Western Canada married into a big ranching family. So the family owned, I think, something like 1 million acres. I mean, it was bananas. And she felt the obligation to know the place, you know, so she would ride around in her horse for hours at a time, just looking, I suppose. And one particular day she saw a sequence of stones, and she noticed that there was some kind of organizational principle or element to them. And she got down and she started walking, and she realized they were in kind of various intersecting circles. And she knew that she had read about these things, these so-called medicine circles out on the prairies that were left by the mostly Cree people who are still very much alive and still very much there, but certainly not living the kind of life any longer that produced the circles in the first place. So she got in touch with the Cree elders and let them, she was very excited that she found something of their culture, and they disappointed her somewhat to remind her that they already knew where they were. She was the one that was finding them. They knew them all along. And somewhere in there, she came to the following realization, and she ended her story simply with this. She said, "It was then that I realized that Christianity just doesn't belong here." Now, if you just let that sit for a minute without arguing, because she's making an observation, she's not really making a case. She's reporting on something that's already so, not something that could be so or might be so, or let's see what happens. And she didn't say it shouldn't be here. She said something much less argumentative and much more historically faithful, which is, by any sane meaning of the term belong, an Eastern Mediterranean Semitic splinter religion does not belong in North America. That's certainly true. Now, what we're going to do about the fact that it's there, because I'm speaking to you from Italy tonight, so I'm not at home at the moment. But what we're going to do about that remains to be seen. You may know that there's a kind of industry of sorts that sprouted up in Anglo-North America, Canada in particular, which they're calling truth and reconciliation. The idea being that we're trying to make some kind of peace with the historical record that very much disfavors Indigenous people and very much shames Europeans who came. So that's the context, the immediate context for what you've asked me. What I'm saying, the reason I mentioned the truth and reconciliation situation is, aside from the fact that it's historically absolutely accurate, but it's also hopelessly premature, that people who look like me in North America set about a project that they call reconciliation without investigating what the word means. And what the word does not mean is being friends. They probably use it that way, or making amends. It doesn't mean that either. The verb to reconcile means this: there was a time when you sat together as mutually acknowledging equals, not same culture, but your culture recognized their culture, theirs recognized yours. And in that sense, there was a parity. But this never happened in the history of North America, in the history of the European presence in North America. It still hasn't happened. And so reconciliation is hopelessly premature as an ideal or as a project to entertain, because we have to get to conciliation first. And conciliation is the project of trying to sit down at the same table and see if we can actually occupy the same place. Can we who are European by our ancestry possibly find ourselves actually present in every phenomenological and mythic sense that the word can be meant? Can we be present in any way that acknowledges that certain people were there before we were, and that this changes everything about our self-understanding? And I suppose the answer is we'll see. But I'm not enormously hopeful, to be honest with you, about the possibilities. And so when I said about making my school, I called it very deliberately the Orphan Wisdom School. And you're getting a sense now of why that is. Orphan Wisdom acknowledges two things at the same time. One of them is nobody who looks like me in North America belongs there. We don't know how to be at home. The signs are everywhere that we don't know how to be at home, that we can't even use the word we and know what we mean. It's that serious. And so orphan seems to fit it seems an apt description of where we stand and how we don't seem to be able to work there. But orphan doesn't mean you have no parents. That's the kind of unexamined meaning of the term. But that's not what it means at all. Everybody's got parents, but you may not be with them now. You may not know who they were. You may not know how to get there from here. That's the condition I'm describing with the word orphan, that we can't get to our origins from where we are. So it's a very long route before you can ever use the word home, I think. And given that, though, you know, we're in a period now where people who look like me, at least in North America, have made shame a kind of national sport. Guilt and shame are a kind of mandatory identity that people have to collude with now in order to obtain sort of social justice, legitimacy, and credibility. And so I saw this coming quite a long time ago, before it really made the front pages and all the podcasts. And so I called the thing Orphan Wisdom to say, listen, because you are culturally orphaned does not mean there's no wisdom available to you. It does mean you probably have to work extraordinarily hard to come to an understanding of what ancestral wisdom might be left to you still. In the meantime, you've got to stop going to other people's religions and ceremonies and ancestors and elders and pretending that it doesn't matter, that as long as you come and as long as your heart's in the right place, that everything's okay and everything works and everything belongs. And it's simply not true. That kind of ecotourism is no different from the empire building that the English and the French and the Spanish and the Portuguese and later on the Germans and before them the Dutch and so on entered into when they thought North America was there for the taking, and South America as well. So this is all to say then that I don't have a religion that I'm able to belong to, not because I condemn or criticize any of the religions available. It's simply because I don't recognize myself, my time, and the reasons that I think I was born now in those religions. I'm not making my own religion. I'm not making an alternative. There's plenty of good religions out there, but I'm not engaged in a surrogate religion. And I'm not a surrogate priest of a surrogate religion. Not at all. I'm engaged in a course of disciplined inquiry. That's what a school is. School is not another way to get to heaven. A school is wondering about the notion of heaven and the understanding that you cannot possibly sell heaven to people who are already at home, who already belong somewhere. The only way you can do that is you have to sell them hell first. And hell, from an indigenous point of view, is not knowing where you are and not belonging and not having recourse to belonging either. Hell seems to be the very antithesis of, not of heaven, but of human. Sorry, I took longer than your question after all.
Yeah, maybe a minute. Yeah.
It's okay.
Anja, would it be okay for you if I have a short follow-up?
Yeah, sure.
So with all what you said, I'm finding myself from Poland, born here, strangely in the same condition, or somehow even like a more layer on the top of that, which is that we here are aiming to become North America, very much. And we think about that, and if you go there, everybody's gasping and it's amazing. It doesn't matter what happens. I mean, this is of course not the whole culture, but a big part of our culture is doing exactly that. So I'm wondering if you have any, while being in Italy right now, maybe it's different there, but for us in Poland, for big part of our culture, this is the condition. This was definitely my story when I was a teenager and in the beginning of the 20s. That was my trying to become. This is from where I was getting my tradition, my understandings, my rituals, and all.
Well, first of all, it's important for me to qualify any response I'd give by saying I'm speaking from a very long way away from Poland. I know physically I'm in Italy tonight, but I mean culturally and linguistically and epistemologically, I'm very, very distant from the Polish experience, yeah? Okay. So with that in mind, I don't think it entirely disqualifies me. It just gives me a certain qualification. I don't think I say anything surprising to anyone when I say that the last 100 years or so in particular have been an exercise across the world in finding a way to crucify Europe and Europeans, largely because of the sordid history that I just described to you very, very briefly. That we all know that Europe as a kind of block, let's call it historical block, the inventors basically of capitalism, the inventors of the so-called age of discovery, the institutionalization of contemporary understandings of slavery and so on. I mean, there's a long list. And it hasn't been an easy time to self-identify as being a European. I myself don't identify myself as ancestrally European. I acknowledge that there's certain DNA realities, but the spirit and the cultural DNA for me doesn't seem to come from Europe explicitly or as a majority of what constitutes me. I was asked the other day, for example, by somebody who was very dismayed that a couple of leading intellectuals that she knows have reverted to Christianity. She was very dismayed by this. And she asked me what I thought. And I said, if you spend your whole life equating self-awareness with historical guilt and shame and the rest, it's not surprising you'd want to break. It's not surprising you'd look anywhere but your own backyard for something that belongs, something that works, something that's not dark and tragic and criminal. Now, don't misunderstand me. I'm not saying that those terms adequately describe Europe as a cultural bloc, not historically, not today either. but also it's proper that we all acknowledge, and I do so as someone who derives from this material as well, that we are walking beneficiaries of what our very recent ancestors did and failed to do and failed to stop doing, and the rest. So no, it doesn't shock me at all that there'd be places all over Europe that would be so keen to trade in their EU citizenship for anything that looks vaguely North American and modern and contemporary and hip and realized and not looking backwards, but looking forwards, you know, all of that sort of thing. Sadly, it makes a lot of sense.
When Kacper, when you said that this feeling of orphanage, that it also resonates with you here in Poland, I would like to continue that point a little bit, because Stephen, you've mostly focused on North America, Canada, and the relation to Europe, but also I think in general this orphaned feeling, this searching for a belonging in your own culture. I think that it's probably something that people all over the world experience in some way or the other currently in a globalized world. For example, I'm from a mixed marriage. Like, my parents are from Germany and from Croatia, and I live in Poland. And this feeling of, where is my home? Where do I belong? Even though these countries are kind of close to each other, but in some way they are also not at all. So this feeling of being a cultural orphan is something that has been part of my life always. And I also observe that within my friends and colleagues here, we are looking for this definition of what is Polish, or what is Polish culture? What are the traditions and rituals that we want to keep alive, or that really still nurture us? And I would like to give you an example from the field of death and grief, because that's where I work in. So in our collective, there are, it's a very colorful group. There are people who are from the funeral world. There are people who work in hospices. There are people who are scientists at different universities. And we look at the topic of death from different angles. And a few of us are very into traditions and rituals from rural areas in Poland. Because the way that like a standard dying or funeral situation looks like today in Poland is pretty similar to, I guess, America, that a person who has died disappears very quickly. Probably the person dies in a hospital or in a hospice, and most likely the family is not even witnessing it, and then the dead body disappears. But this is quite a young development in Poland. Most people here remember very well from their own childhood that a dead person used to be at home, probably that died at home, but then the dead body used to be at home. And there was a very strong tradition of wakes, of 3 days and 3 nights of being together, gathering as a community in song, in prayer, in eating together, in drinking together, in spending time as a community with the dead person. And that's almost gone. Like, in very few areas that's still alive, but there are people now who are trying to kind of keep this alive or to revive this. But we encounter different, let's say, problems, because when we look at these practices, when we look at, for example, the songs that are traditionally sung there, we see that these songs have many parts that are anti-Semitic, that are violent, that are not in all in congruence with our values. So now that's my question is how to work with tradition in a healthy way, like not how just to reproduce a form and treat it, because that's folklore, I would say, if we just repeat a certain form, but how to get to the essence of rituals and traditions and use them in a way that really nurture us.
I don't know that my answer is going to be very pleasing. I see it because what I'm going to do is count on the fact that people listening and yourself and both of you, you can certainly answer from the point of view of how to choose the best from what's available to you, how to mobilize the most, use the word healthy, the healthiest, most life-affirming, culturally honoring aspects of the thing that seems to be slipping away. I'm going to speak on behalf of the things that are less savory, less tasteful, less sought after. And here's why. I can tell you from a place that basically has no traditions to return to. That's where I'm speaking from. That the instinct is routinely to imagine that every tradition is by definition a good thing, a deep thing, an honorable thing, a worthy thing. What this means is the bad guys have no ancestors. That means the living only have good ancestors, happy ancestors, successful, honorable, culturally in-tuned ancestors. And apparently all the bad guys have no ancestry, have no heredity. They and their line stopped. Well, you know what I'm saying by suggesting this. This is not true. The fact is that the bad guys, and this is not a very elegant term for it, but if I can just, for the sake of making the point, just use the term good guys and bad guys. The bad guys have as many living relatives among us as the good guys do, easily. Now, when it comes time for cultural restoration, who do you think needs you more? Do you think the good guys need you more, the good ancestors, the ones that you feel an affinity with, or that you'd like to have an affinity with, the ones you would like to choose if you have a choice? You can hear what I'm saying. I'm suggesting to you, you don't have a choice. I'm suggesting to you this, that the bad guys are the ones that need you most. They're the ones that need the restoration. They're the ones that need the redemption. They're the ones that need the remembering, the active in this world, present day remembering. They're the ones that need the traditions revived, and they're the ones that need the ceremonies undertaken for their sake, on their behalf, in their name, because they were. And I tell you, where I live, nobody's lining up to do something like that. Everybody's lining up to answer to the good guy description and get their marching orders there, see? So what we're talking, well, I mean, there's a great conundrum that's behind the question that you've asked, which is just behind it. And it goes like this. You had a cultural sequence available to you, not just around dying, but around births and weddings and, you know, all kinds of events in life and so forth, right? And they were, relatively speaking, intact. They're within living memory of the people that you can talk to about them now. And so you have to ask yourself very seriously, man, if they were working, what happened? How can, in the space of a lived life, they'd be so compromised that people fall away from them rapidly and eagerly, apparently, such that the people who are trying to remember old Poland, if I could use that term, are in the minority. If you're in the minority, where's old Poland? Does it even exist to be revived? In other words, there's a big question here, which is, where does culture live? And if it's not alive, is it simply hiding? Has it simply gone quiet? Has it gone up the mountain to wait for people to come to their senses? I mean, now that the communist presence is no more, how can you have lived, how can the cultural continuity of Poland live through that, but not live through globalization, for example? How can it be so undone by something that looks an awful lot like peacetime, not wartime? It's astounding, really. I mean, I've wondered this so many times in different ways. Did people get together and just say, apropos of elders, let's say, did they just say one day, you know, I think we've tried respecting your elders and all that stuff, and, you know, mixed blessing, not so good. Let's try respecting middle-aged people instead of elders. Let's see how that goes. But you know, there was never a meeting where that was decided, and the body politic voted, and people decided to walk away from the open casket and walk away from the 3-day funeral and walk away from all these things. And yet walk away they did in their millions. Are they walking away from something? Or are they walking towards something? Or do they know? Or are they moving at all? This is what I hear behind what you're asking.
That's better. I'm just wondering, because in theory, we have very little time.
Yes.
I would really like to go deeper into this, but maybe just let's share a little bit if people want to continue meeting us and Stephen in May. What is this going to be? Like these 2 days in Katowice, the workshop, what are we going to do there?
Well, are you asking me?
Yes.
Okay.
Or both of you, actually.
Yeah. I'm interested to hear what Kacper has to say, but I'll go first. So it's very important that you don't speak with authority about something that hasn't happened yet. Right? Okay, so because I don't know who else is coming, I don't know what's going to happen. I do know what I'm going to bring, or at least I have a dawning idea of what I'm going to bring. And if I can mention 3 or 4 kind of quick word association clusters, this is the kind of thing I have in mind. So you're speaking to somebody who is a kind of absentee farmer, right? I'm building a barn, but I'm not building anything. I'm just paying for it because I can't be there and pay for it at the same time. So I have to travel and work and then bring the money back and keep it going and subsidize the farm and so forth. So I have a kind of rural sensibility, but I make all my living basically in urban places. I have a solitude inclination, but I make all my living being with a lot of people. I favor a kind of personal silence or stillness, but I make my living by talking or reciting. I'm a lone agent, but I have a band. So you get the idea. I'm not very consistent. I can't seem to work out a way of living according to my nature that that seems to work very, very well. So I bring all of that to what we're going to do in a couple of weeks. I'm really concerned about this question that's behind what you were asking me earlier about belonging, about longing, which is a completely different word in English and a different kind of emotional organization and mythic structure, the structure of longing. The understanding of, well, I suppose I could say it best with this. One time I was teaching in England, it was the first time I was there. And I stopped in the middle of my sentence because I was told I had to ask a very specific question right now. And I did. I said to all the English and Scottish and Irish and whoever else was there, people in the crowd, I said, do you ever think of us? And there was just an embarrassed silence and everybody looked down and nobody knew where to look and nobody knew what I meant. And so I asked it again. No, I said, it's a real question. I don't know the answer. I'm guessing from your reaction right now what the answer is. But what I'm asking you is, do you ever think of us? Because who are we? We are what you became when you left, you see. Do you ever think of us? And finally someone put up their hand and said, honestly, no. I said, never. Isn't it true? And they all acknowledged basically, that's true, never. I said, now ask me. Ask you what? Ask me what I ask you. Ask me if we ever think of you. And somebody did. And I answered, every day. And that's what I'm bringing. And that's what we're going to wonder about. And somewhere in there is, how do you establish a community that's responsive to the troubles of the times? Mm-hmm. That's not purely an act of nostalgia or fantasy or a kind of Disney vision of what culture means? Or how do you be involved in the redemption business after all, when not all of your culture maybe should be coming back? Things like this. Somewhere in there, we'll talk about rights, R-I-T-E-S, around dying and death, around birth, around matrimony, all of these kinds of things. And please remind me, what's the name of the village that it's up in the mountains that they brought me to that has the cool clothes and the felt? Yes, I was there, and I have to go back there this time too, please.
Zakopane. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're basically gonna take a bus and go to Zakopane and buy and buy a belt. But yes. Yeah, but my answer would be we're gonna try to pay, I guess, some kind of libation with good questions, like maybe the ones we had today did us some good, and we're gonna listen to Stephen, and we're gonna do that for almost 2 days, relentlessly, and we're gonna maybe sing a song and have some food. We're gonna be cooking ourselves here in our place, and yeah, that's the intention, and we'll see what will happen actually. Yeah.
I'm very much looking forward to it. So maybe Kacper, just say if somebody's interested, where people can find more information.
Mm-hmm. So there's already Facebook event that you can look up on Orphan Wisdom Facebook page, or Instytut Dobrej Śmierci, or Heimat Końca, and we'll be sending link right now in the comment to the live stream, where you can fill out the form, leave your email, and we'll send you a PDF with all the info that you need to know to come. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing you actually very, very soon. It's just a few weeks, basically. So shall we wrap it up here? I think that's maybe a good point. Thank you so much. Such a pleasure to meet you. And all the best for your time in Italy, and then have a safe travel, Stephen, to Poland.
Thank you very much. We'll see you in a few weeks, and thank you for today.
Thank you. Okay. I think I stopped the live stream. I did, yes. Yeah, okay, I didn't.
Very good. How can you possibly ask questions of this scale and give yourself 40 minutes to try to, it's impossible, no?
No.
Okay, so the beautiful thing about trying to do this is how skillful you can be at failing. Yeah.
We're good at that.
And that's what our days together will be. How skillful can we be in failing to know everything, and failing to figure everything out, and failing to answer every question and make sure everybody's okay at the end? It's bullshit. We're not going to do that. We're going to treat people like they're grown-ups, you see. And we're in a troubled time. And if you're not troubled by the times, there's something wrong with you. So that's what we're coming to. And the stakes are very high, and it doesn't mean we don't laugh, though. Of course, because laughter and tragedy, so they'll be there, and you'll be there, and I'll be there. So
I might change my.
We're
mind.
halfway home. Natalie says she might change her flight and she might be there.
Yeah, great.